If I was to say to you, Szymon Marciniak, you would come back with me right away as to who that is, wouldn't you? I was World Cup final referee yesterday. Polish gentleman who took control of the game yesterday, and he's received huge accolades for his officiating performance yesterday. But many have noted, Martin, his time as an ex-pro, a footballer. That's helped him in his refereeing journey. He was a former player who played in midfield for a top-flight Polish outfit, and he took up full-time refereeing in 2006. Do former pros, do you think, make better refs, Martin? Is this evidence of this guy played, so he knows what he's doing on the field of play?
I think he does all right, yeah. I think it's an interesting concept. It takes a long time, though, doesn't it? If you've been a player, we see it in cricket. You see former players that play cricket go on an umpire, but to do it in the top game is very difficult. I think it's very interesting. There are times when you look at it and you say, okay, is he trying to seek to gain an advantage? Would the referee have seen that? I imagine most referees have played the game, Jim, at some level or not. So we shouldn't necessarily bring that into. Some might not have done. But I think it's very interesting that, he seemed to be on the major issues. He didn't really handle the penalty situation too well. There were one or two moments, but I think we're nitpicking, although the penalties were key to who won the game. So that's where he could have cleaned up a little bit. But no, I think certainly his reflexes, his decision-making, his keeping up with the game, he was really on it last night, just maybe the penalty incident where Martinez, the French fans today, won't really appreciate the way that Martinez was allowed to control that situation.
You're in a very jovial mood this morning. What have you got for us?
With all the money in the game, we've got to do something about this refereeing situation in terms of making it a valued profession. The reasons why cricketing umpires become part of the flair because they're not part of the same vilification culture that seems to be only available and only prevalent to football referees. You can make bad umpiring decisions in cricket, you can make bad umpiring decisions or refereeing decisions in rugby, but you don't suffer this absolute dissection and evisceration and absolute demasculation that you seem to suffer as a football referee. And that might explain why players I think it's probably common sense to suggest that the best way to have somebody referee a game is to have somebody that actually knows how to play the game, and that leads to the conclusion that maybe it would be a really wanted and advantageous opportunity for former footballers to go into it. You've got to make the career path better. I think the financial side of things is at a level now where these referees can make a hell of a lot of dough by being top-class referees, and so they should, because if the game's got lots and lots of quality in it in terms of the players getting paid, then so should the referees. So I think we've got to carve out some niche, which it's like, I always liken refereeing to being like a police driver. They drive at advanced speeds and they learn to drive at high speeds and they become excellent and proficient at driving. And referees should have this uniqueness about them, that there should be a massive investment. They built St George's to be able to bring the next generation of footballers through. I am not suggesting in this conversation the next generation of referees are as important, but we are attaching an enormous amount of importance to how referees officiate games. Yeah. Why aren't we attaching the same financial and logistical landscape to building a raft of excellent referees that can have whistle and will travel?
Exactly.
In terms of the quality.
Well, when you employ plenty of people in your time, Simon, and you'd be like, I'll tell you what we'll do, we'll pay you that. So like to this gentleman yesterday, to get others like him at that level, what would you pay a guy like that?
Well, I mean, you'd pay them based upon their performances. You'd pay them based upon the fact that you're calling them into the top leagues. You'd pay them proportionate to where they're refereeing. That doesn't mean I'd want to pay a League Two referee a pittance because a Premier League referee gets paid a Premier League wage, because you're compounding the problem. You're suggesting that an important decision is less important in League Two than it is in the Premier League. But I would want to invest in the structure of ensuring that the quality of our refereeing churns out a set of referees that are constantly at the highest level. I'd want to ensure that there was a pathway for former footballers. In no way are you going to get Premier League footballers on 70 grand a week, even if they're on 70 grand a week for 1 year. Right? They're still millionaires by the end of it. You're not going to get those guys to want to be referees on 500 grand a year.
No, they won't be allowed to be, will they? And the pathway takes too long anyway.
Well, then I would fast track the pathway to some extent and find a way to create an environment that gives me an elite referee in a reasonable amount of time. Now, whether that's 5 years or 6 years or whatever we consider it to be.
So if you've been a Premier League player, then you seriously telling me that I can go and referee Man City versus Manchester United next time round, having been out of the game for 15 years, come back in, and I'm at the level.
No, I don't think you could referee Manchester United, that's for sure.
No, so your top Premier League players are not going to be allowed to. Maybe they can go abroad. Maybe they can go abroad.
Yeah, but what did this guy do, Martin? He played for a top Polish club.
Are you suggesting there's a bias on that basis?
Well,
then?
People would assume that there's a bias, wouldn't they?
Why?
Would I be allowed to? Would the Old Trafford fans accept me as a referee?
You just gave the example of English
go to
cricketers,
White Hart Lane and
English
referee?
cricketers becoming umpires. And I'm assuming that they referee county games as well. So I'm assuming they've umpired, so not refereed.
Exactly.
Umpired county games. So why would it be any different?
Do they display bias?
Well, I think it'd be very different.
But the
problem is,
point
Martin,
is,
none of you
Martin, you
want
wouldn't
to do it.
you wouldn't get them to do it.
Because it's not in your interest to do it.
There isn't a pathway to do it to begin with.
There is a pathway.
No,
This
no,
guy
no.
did
It
it.
takes too long.
He played for a
It takes
top
far
Polish
too long.
club.
When you finish your career at 35, 36, 8 years of age,
No, you
whatever it
don't
is.
want to do it, you lot.
What?
It doesn't interest you.
We're not allowed to do it, Jim. The pathway doesn't exist. It takes, 10,
Sam
15
is saying
years.
change the pathway, change the structure of it to allow you in there because it makes sense.
Yes, but it doesn't.
Certain players take their badges early, right?
Yeah.
So if you had a proclivity to thinking that you want to get involved in officiating the game, why would you, as a player at 32 years of age, when you're looking at your career finishing, why would you not suggest, or 30
I think
years
there's
of age,
circumstances that exist where you could be a player that
because you know it'd be ridiculed,
you
and parodied by those in
you
the
could be
dressing
a
room.
young player, let's say at Arsenal, but your career was cut short through injury, and you decided to go into another avenue, another pathway. I think then there's potential. There's definitely potential, but if you've been a top, well, I'm not saying top, but if you've been a Premier League player, I don't see
But
that
I
you
think
can
I
then
made that point. I made that point. You
okay.
brought the Premier League back into the equation. I said that I don't think you'll get Premier League players in there because the economics won't make sense.
I don't think it's doing the economics. I just think you're just not going to be allowed to do it.
By-
Are you?
by
So
whom?
morally, you can, how can I referee
well-
Arsenal versus Tottenham?
Well, it depends if you're an Arsenal or a Tottenham fan. But I don't understand your point. Why would you suggest that someone that's come from that environment, which is perfectly equipped for that environment, because we will, if we put professional referees that have come from the footballing background, the next argument that would be advanced that those that want to discredit refereeing is they didn't play at the highest level. They played at a League One level or a League Two level, so that means they can't possibly understand what it's like to play at Premier League level. So you can never win this argument. You can never beat the outcome that some people want to have. But I don't understand your point. I suggest that your real-world economics are probably right, that if you've played at the Premier League, you're unlikely to want to go down to a level of refereeing a game for a fraction of a dough that you've already earned. But there would be no bias, and there'd be no reason why you couldn't do it besides your own choices.
Well, you suggest that the world just evolves around money, Simon, don't you? So there might be one or two people out
It's
there
a
that just
huge
love the
driver,
game.
isn't it?
People love the game, and there's a
Okay,
professionalism.
Well, to make it more
there's a
attractive for them,
professionalism that
Martin.
they want the game to be run in a fair manner, and there might well be a footballer
So
out
that's
there
great,
that
then,
can
isn't
do
it? So you'd want a
But I
Premier
don't
League
think the
footballer to do that,
pathway is
wouldn't you?
there.
So in the real world, what is the part? So if you're going to tell me there's barriers, tell me what those barriers are.
Well, the scrutiny that you'd be exposed to. I mean, everyone would question
Right, so
every
that's called
decision you make,
character.
wouldn't they?
Well, isn't that? Well, hang on a second. You just turned around and said you want people to establish a fair and equitable game, and now you're telling me it's about scrutiny. Make your mind up.
One thing I will say is when you're playing the game at the top level, when you're on it and you see every match, you judge a referee every week, and you know the good ones from the bad ones, the ones that keep up with play, the ones that can see the tackle, that when you get caught.
You don't want solutions. You're one of those that wants to point at a problem and say, I won't do this and I won't do that. But when it comes to solutions, I won't do that either.
No, I think
surely a professional footballer at some point, whether it's a Premier League footballer or not, if he wanted to be a referee, and the financial landscape was part and parcel of the equation, because we don't all live in utopia, Martin.
I'm pretty
financial
certain,
landscapes
though,
are part of it.
I think maybe we're being disrespectful to the current referees. I think maybe a lot of those have played the game themselves, and they just decided they wanted to referee it.
Well, we're advancing a point that 90% of you pros in a different argument would have.
Yeah.
You turn around and say, we regularly listen to people, not so much yourself, but other people that have sat in on a Monday, whether it's Graeme or it's Danny or whoever it was saying, referees would be better served if they actually played the bleeding game. They'd know what it looked like when simulation came into play. They'd know what it looked like when contact came down. They'd know what people are suggesting is something that only a player can know because a player's been in that situation. So we've listened to that forever and a day.
We don't have those types of individuals that want to be...
Because the pathway hasn't been
position.
created by the nature of the
Change
culture
the
of the
structure of the
sport.
pathway, Martin, and
Yeah,
pay
that'd be
them.
great. I'm all
Pay
for
them
that.
properly.
Maybe that's an initiative for the PFA.
And because
Yeah,
this
well,
guy,
God knows.
this
We
fellow
wanna get it
yesterday
done.
was living
Well,
proof
no,
of that.
let's recruit the right types of people. Let's identify the right of people that can stand up. And by that time,
Let's
by
keep
the
the
way,
PFA as far away from it as possible,
I
then.
tell you what, by that time, let's mic up the players or the referees as they are. And then they tell us why they're making these decisions, and we make it, Jim, transparent, so we can actually see and the fans
love that.
sharing it.
I'd love that.
And we do it. We put it up on the big screens, and we look like they do in cricket and all the other sports, where they're protected as a former cricketer.
But that
you're
way, Martin,
protected.
you would hear all the dissent as well from the players, which would be great.
But that would be fantastic.
Jim,
but
let's
also,
hear it.
the overriding issue's got to be addressed. And the one that is the elephant in the room is the culture of football lends itself to no respect. So referees are not respected. They are there to be ridiculed by the media, by pundits, by players and by managers. Managers make more mistakes.
So do you think then, if they were actually mic'd up, we might respect them a little bit more?
Well, no. I think
not?
I think that we ultimately have to respect the culture of a referee by respecting it first, by necessarily. We don't hear what players
By his mere
say.
existence, yes, I agree.
Yeah.
But it's annoying, isn't it? It's annoying when referees get things very, very wrong.
Well, like managers and players. But the only people that are not allowed to are referees, apparently.
Yeah. And this guy deserves all the praise that's going, Martin, because he missed Euro 2020, this Polish fella, Marciniak, yesterday, who was outstanding. He was. Every now and again, yeah, he could have let play go on a bit more when the French were breaking out. But he was outstanding. He missed Euro 2020 after being diagnosed with a heart illness. So he came through, having played the game, top referee, top game from him. Maybe that's the way forward. Ex-pros become refs. But do they want to?